Alright guys, I'm going to go over the homework that you requested from the 18th and the 19th together because basically it's the same thing. So for the 18th I got requests to go over 3, 4, and 6. So number 3 on the 18th, and I'm keeping all the identities here. I didn't write the reciprocal identities, but now those should be commonplace. These are basically the newer ones. So the first one says to simplify cosine theta times tan of theta. All you have to do is change tan. Tan is a quotient. Tan is really sine over cosine. Multiply that by the cosine. Remember, cosine technically is over 1. You don't have to write it, but it's there. This cancels out, and you're just left with sine. Number 4 was cosine theta times cosecant theta. Again, this is a reciprocal function. Change this. It's really 1 over sine. So if this is 1 over sine times cosine, when I multiply, of course, as you do with fractions, I'm left with cosine over sine, which is simply tangent. And number 6 from the 18th, I have, let's move this over a little bit, secant theta cosecant theta cosine theta. Secant is really 1 over cosine. Cosecant is 1 over sine. And cosine is cosine. Now remember guys, you're still following the rules of math. For example, if this had 1 over 4 times 1 over 5 times 4, you could cancel this 4 with this 4 and be left with 1 over 5. Same thing here. This denominator could cancel with that the numerator. You're left with 1 over sine, which is a reciprocal function, and it's really cosecant. Okay, let's go over now the homework questions you had on the next section. Those were a little more. Okay, that was 2 through 6, so we have a few to go over there. Flip this page over. May as well reutilize it. Okay, so number 2. Number 2 said the sine of x plus cosine x. Is that cotangent? Yes, cotangent x. I left sine the way it was, plus cosine. Cotangent is really cosine over sine. So I can multiply these. I can't cancel anything out. So this is going to be sine x plus cosine squared x over sine x. If you want to visualize this better, think of this over a denominator of 1. They don't have common denominators. So what I'm going to have to do is multiply this whole thing by sine x over sine x to get a common denominator. When I do that, this new fraction is sine squared x over sine x plus cosine squared x over sine x. Now they have common denominator, so the new numerator, I'm going to move this up a little bit. The new numerator is sine squared x plus cosine squared x all over the denominator of sine x. And if you look at your Pythagorean identities up here, cosine squared x plus sine squared x always equals 1. So this numerator becomes 1 over sine x, which is cosecant x. Okay, now number 3 is very similar to it. Number 3 starts off by just saying cosine x times tan x plus cotan x. All right, if I change these first, I could do one or two things. I could distribute it, then change it, or I could change it and then distribute it. So on your homework sheet, I know I changed it first. Let's do it that way. This is sine x over cosine x plus this is cosine x over sine x. When I distribute that, here the cosines cancel out. So I'm left with sine x plus cosine times cosine is cosine squared x over sine x. Guys, this is exactly the same as this. Same situation. Follow the same rules down. Okay, I got the same situation. They're basically the same problems. Okay, so I'm not going to go over it again. It's the same thing here. Just do the same thing we did here. So number 4, let me move this up. Number 4 is, again, cosine x times, whoops, my pencil broke, 1 plus tan squared x. Okay, this is an identity. And I know they're not familiar to you, but you have to start looking. These are identities. You have to start looking at your identities that I made you copy. So technically this is secant squared x times cosine x. Secant is really 1 over cosine squared x. Remember, it's squared, so square it. So one cosine will cancel off with one of these cosines, and you're going to be left with 1 over cosine x, which we can write as secant x. Okay, look for your identities. That's what happened there. All right, let me get a new piece of paper for number 5, because it was a doozy. Oh, I'll just flip this over. All right, number 5 is tangent x minus secant squared x over tan x. Okay, all right, so what I did first, I changed tangent into sine x over cosine x minus. I changed this and I changed this. Okay, this is really 1 over cosine squared x. This is really sine x over cosine x. Now, this is what happened here. This fraction is being divided by this fraction. I did that off on the side. 1 over cosine squared x divided by this fraction means I multiply by the reciprocal, which means one of these cancels out with one of these. So now I'm left with 1 over cosine x sine x. I'm going to take this answer and bring it back into the problem. So I have sine x over cosine x minus 1 over cosine x sine x. All right, now what's going on is I don't have common denominators. He's missing a sign. So I'll multiply this whole thing by the sign. Getting a little lazy there. Sine times sine is sine squared x over sine x cosine x. Since it's the same denominator, I'm just going to extend this, save myself sometimes, minus 1. Now, going back to my Pythagorean identities, it's 1 minus sine squared x, not sine squared x minus 1. It's reversed. Since it's reversed, it's technically the negative cosine squared. Okay, and that I know was tricky for some people. The actual identity is 1 minus sine. We have sine minus 1. So this now translates to be a negative. Oh, let me move this up. Negative cosine squared x over sine x cosine x. All right, this is not part of a binomial, guys. You could cancel this and this out. Think of it in terms as if you had x over xy, right? Or let's say x squared. You could cancel this and this. It is not the same as if you had x minus y. Here you couldn't cancel, okay? But here you could. This I could cancel. And I'm left with a negative cosine over a sine, which under, keep doing that, which under normal circumstances, cosine over sine is cotangent, but now we have a negative sign, so it's just negative cotangent x. Yeah, that one was a doozy. Okay, let me quickly go over number 6. All right, I'm going to use this paper right here. Number 6 is, let's see. Oh, 6 was easy. 6 was 1 minus cosine of q. I don't know where q came from. Over sine q. Minus cosine of q over sine q. Well, they have the same denominators right off the bat, so that was easy. I could combine it. So it's 1 minus cosine q minus cosine q over, oh, I'm sorry, this was plus. I was wondering why. This is plus. Over sine q. And a positive cosine and a negative cosine cancel out. And I'm just simply left with 1 over sine of q, which simplifies down to cosecant q. And I don't think I'm ever going to use q again because it just looks really awkward. All right, I hope that helped explain the problems on your homework, guys.